Good afternoon, and welcome to what will soon be renamed as the Pennington Institute of African Centered Thought. I welcome you to part 2 of our Africa Centered Ancestral Healing series. We left off in the first part of the series in talking about the overview and introduction to what exactly the seasoning process is and was. I'd like to move forward today in trying to make some sense of where we are today in terms of Africa-centered healing. Also, we're going to look at and ask the question, what is African spirituality? Are you African? Do you have to be African to be able to go through the Africa-Centered Ancestral Healing programs? The first part of that is no. It can be applied to any culture, but it is specifically created for Black people or African descendants or Africans. And you will find controversies and conjectures on all levels, especially when it comes to spirituality and religion. And in the book, my book, Africa Centered Ancestral Healing, I worked pretty much around the clock to try to explain that after the experiences I had had with clients, in workshops, seminars, and the conferences that we do on an annual basis. So one thing I want to point out about Africa-Centered Ancestral Healing is we get the personality confused with the divine. And when we talk about spirituality, that is exactly the point. Because we are influenced by external circumstances and situations that shroud what we know as the ego. The ego is impacted by the 5 major senses of touch, feel, smell, taste, and hearing. And on that note, I would like to point out, when we talk about hearing, let's look at the heart, H-E-A-R-T. And then we have hear, and then we have ear. Matters of the heart. In the last episode, I talked about the heart being the catalyst to the brain, the seat of the ancestors. And many people say, oh, that we're far removed, 1, 2, 3 times removed, and that was them. No. Ancestral healing is not about a bloodline. It's about the soul line. The soul is immortal. Therefore, there is no 1, 2, 3 times removed, or if you want to say twice, 3 times removed. If that were the case, then maybe there wouldn't be saints. Maybe we wouldn't look at those that come before us as examples to how to move forward. Maybe that's what keeps us from staying present. It's because we are caught up in the ego, which is the personality. And so, what is the personality? In my book on page 41 in chapter 1, I believe that's chapter 1, personality stems from the Latin word theatrical mask. A performer wears to project different roles or disguise their identities. At the most basic, personality is the characteristic patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that make a person unique. Now, if that is the case, and that's how it's defined, who are we? Why are we here? You cannot be in this world and not be of a lineage before you. You have to be a combination of atoms, a soul, and a spirit. Spirituality is complex. Religion is the way of the heart to spirituality. So in moving forward a little bit with that, then we can look back at trauma. And there's different stages of trauma. And as Dr. Bruce Bynum, who wrote the book, An African Unconscious, he is a scholar and a clinical psychologist. He said, there are not always answers, but it is akin to breathing. The air is invisible. Blood is inward and flowing. And these occurrences exist, making the soul-spirit connection the science of the cosmos and nature. That is the evidence of the soul-spirit connection. Now we understand that there's two sides to this, because Sir Francis Galton was the one who was the cousin to Charles Darwin, who was also related to Sigmund Freud. And I bring that up because that is how the myths of psychology started. Francis Galton merely reported what he didn't understand when he saw the Africans in spiritual rituals or dancing, or what you would call today the Holy Ghost in Protestant churches. However, that is not the case. When we don't understand a thing, we define it based on what we do understand. And that, again, can get convoluted and is complex. It's just the natural aspect of human beingness. So when we look at racial types in all cultures, I don't want to get caught up on this word race, because it is a man-made construct. And it spins off of caste systems. Every culture has experienced trauma. Every family. And the reason that we experience trauma, which is chaos, is there's no life without sacrifice. So I'm bringing this up to talk about the tragedies and the traumas that we've experienced over centuries that does not go away. And we only process it by talking about it and respecting that with each other. We cannot change Black history to American history. It is a part of American history. And that's part of sweeping it under the rug. We have Ivy League universities that are leading the way to explain the ills of what they have done in the past. Namely, my great-great-grandfather, who they just honored in 2023, who was just honored, I should say, with a real degree, because he wasn't allowed in the classroom, but he was determined. And his determinism to walk from Hagerstown, Maryland, as a kid for freedom, which we will talk about in the next episode. How many of us can do it with no shoes? There is a trauma affiliated with that. So all of the man-made atrocities have impacted humanity. And is it because of the ego? Is it ego-driven? I don't have those answers. I just have a couple of solutions that may be valuable to others. The DSM is beginning to, and then I would say in the last 10, 15 years, recognize spirituality as a part of healing. Dr. David Lukoff, he introduced religion or spiritual problems as a significant breakthrough in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This is not new for indigenous people, and let's say we always leave out the Native Americans. Why is that? Dr. Olufemi Morakio, a Nigerian psychiatrist and who was a mentor to me and part founder of Root Psychology, he said that a typical therapy session is based on a self in a universe model. It's a Yoruba traditional healing framework that he developed with his patients who were experiencing emotional trauma. Bynum knew Dr. Morakio, Dr. Bynum, and he also agreed, and Dr. Bynum referred to spiritual traditions as a coiled life force or energy associated and moving up the spine, known as, in Kemet, the Kundalini. Dr. Bynum believes that there is more energetic representation in what would be called the subtle body or the chakras. He also talked about, and we need to talk about and recognize, the identity crisis that came as a result of trauma. So when we look again at identity crisis, these are chapters in my book. This is chapter 2. There are many organizations that were created to explore exactly what I'm talking about. The boy with the color line, the slave codes, the Freedmen Bureau. It goes on and on. And let's not leave out the NAACP and the eugenics movement. We're not going to leave that out. Dr. Harriet Washington talked about in her book, Medical Apartheid, that psychological conversions are the many hidden unconscious and devious pathways in which the effects of anxiety are converted psychologically, leading to the development of psychological symptoms and reactions that include neurosis and follow trauma. Dr. Momani Baruti in Atlanta, he is the co-director of an independent African Centered School. And his book, he's done excellent work on identity. And one of his main points is that to deny a culture their native tongue fabricates a chaotic and confused identity through systems of forced acculturation and assimilation. That in itself poses mental and physical health challenges. He said, words give ideas power. Nomo, as he said, is spoken reality, thought spoken, thought created. So when we go and you look at a people, when I say Black people, why study the trauma that they've endured and continue to endure and continue to be in denial and continue to hide behind political affiliations? You have to consider everything was stripped, even the name. That didn't happen to other groups. Bouncing back to Dr. Pennington, he said in his book, The Fugitive Blacksmith, it occasioned a separation between my mother and the only two children she then had, and my father, to about 200 miles. I often suffered much from hunger and other similar causes. To estimate the sad state of the slave child, You must look at it as helpless, as a helpless human being thrown up on the world without the benefit of a natural garden. He went on to cite what the moral wrong of that was. He said, there's very strong evidence of moral wrong is brought to view. But God declares that the one shall be disannulled and that the other shall not stand. In other words, the truth will be revealed. There are many stories about Dr. Pennington, but what amazed me is they didn't have our story. They did not have our story. We have the evidence and documentation. And they didn't have our story because his son was born out of wedlock, illegitimate, by a Native American Choctaw woman. That was why he moved to Florida. That was why he took a break. But that's not what history reports. I am grateful to my great Aunt Helen Eula Pennington Hicks Howell, who gave me this information. And at the time she gave it to me, I wasn't interested. And that shows you how the essence of spirituality flows, that they will find you even when you're not looking for them, meaning the ancestors. I want to talk a little bit about the Africa Centered Ancestral Healing Conference that's coming up. It's the 10th anniversary honoring Dr. James W.C. Pennington. We will be shooting the trailer for the movie, The Fugitive Blacksmith. We honor people at the conference every year. In our last conference, we honored Dr. Maxine Mims. Dr. Maxine Mims is the queen mother of the Pacific Northwest. Her record, I cannot even begin to explain, and her birthday is coming up. I can't explain who she is, but maybe a special person to her can.
Hello, everyone. I heard that you were honoring Dr. Maxine Mims, and I wanted to share in that honoring, in that celebration of her. Some of you may not know this, but Dr. Mims, you were instrumental in my own life as I created the Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. Remember sitting around Maya's table, advising me, giving me counsel as we developed the curriculum. And to think that you retired in 1990, more than 30 years ago, but have continued to serve and share your deep knowledge and your clear compassion for creating opportunities for education. It's just a wonder. You are a wonder. It's been such a deep privilege of mine to know you and spend time in your presence. And I'm hoping that today's recognition helps to remind you of the incredible ripple effect you have made in the lives of so many people in your community and actually around the world. I thank you. March the 4th. Love to you from January 29th.
Tickets for our conference they are on Eventbrite. Feel free to order the book if you purchase your ticket by March 1st. You will receive a discount, and you can email us to get the code to do that. The other thing that I would like to say is I'd like to really thank you for listening. I really want to thank you from my heart. My, as we say, Ori, that the blessings will be bestowed upon you on your sacred journey as you travel the road of enlightenment, empowerment, and awareness. The greatest part of life is you. You are part of this process. If you are watching this program, I would like to hear from you. You can go to our website, www.IACTNOW. 0119.com. Also, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and feel free to subscribe.